ceremonies, Nathan Cassar.
Well, welcome back to another thrilling episode of the Justice Planned Weddings podcast show. I'm your host, as always, Nathan Cassar, and today we have a truly special guest joining us. David Madden, an accomplished wedding photographer based in Sydney, New South Wales, with over 16 years of experience in capturing the most precious moments of couples' lives. Now, David's journey into wedding photography is a testament to the power of passion and reinvention. After transitioning from a career in finance, which came to a halt during the 2008 global financial crisis, David turned to his longtime passion for photography. Starting as a second photographer at a well-known Sydney wedding studio, he honed his craft and eventually branched out to build his own creative style. Now, over the course of this career, David has had the privilege of capturing weddings all over New South Wales, Australia, and even in Europe. From cathedrals to beachside ceremonies, from intimate elopements to grand weddings with over 400 guests, David has seen and photographed it all, and he approaches each wedding like it's his first. In addition to his work as a wedding photographer, David is an avid mountain runner, having tackled 100 kilometers and 100-mile courses. Wow, that's a lot. A true testament, of course, to his true sense of achievement and grit. He also coaches his kids' soccer team, reliving his childhood joy through his fun and rewarding role. Today, David will be sharing some invaluable insights into what goes into the planning and preparation for a successful wedding day. We'll talk about the difference between professional wedding photographers and the Uncle Brian, so to speak, with a camera, the importance of choosing the right team of vendors, and how David's unique background has shaped his approach to photographing weddings. Plus, we'll dive into his style of shooting and how he gently guides couples to create images that truly evoke emotion and atmosphere. So if you're a couple planning your wedding right now, or if you're a photographer looking for some inspiration, you're in for a real treat today. David, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Nathan. How are you?
Doing wonderfully. We are recording this just after Sydney has been dealt a deluge of rain over the weekend, causing an absolute minefield for couples. And I guess maybe this is probably a really great point to start, only because photographers and videographers deal with the brunt of that kind of inclement weather and unexpected circumstance. And so as much as I would argue that myself as an MC, I'm definitely a maestro of the unexpected in one sense, you as a photographer have to deal with that pesky little thing, which is the photos still need to be taken. So when it comes to a day like we've had over the weekend, where weather just doesn't play the way the couple's obviously hoping for, how do you adapt on the day in order to make sure that they still come away feeling as though that they've, been able to capture the day, even if it wasn't exactly how they envisioned, when they first planned it?
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, a lot of the day is, excuse me, a lot of the day is focused indoors. Critically, though, the bride and groom photo shoot after the ceremony is by and largely held outdoors. And like you say, when we get weekends like we've just had and the weather doesn't play along, it's important to have that plan B in your back pocket. So obviously you plan for the best, you hope for the best, but you also plan for the worst. And it's a case of just trying to get out when you can, sometimes using props like umbrellas, as long as it's not too windy, to capture the shots as you initially imagine them. Sometimes the weather is so bad that you need to kind of, I guess, move a lot of the things that you planned indoors, or look for spaces where there's cover and there's you can get the couple and the bridal party outdoors without the risk of getting too wet.
No, absolutely. And I definitely, I can appreciate the fact that there has to be a lot of quick thinking, but at the same time, as you say, planning is also of the essence as well. And I think it's really important that, so I know I've been in experience where couples have said, look, we just don't believe in the plan B. And I go, look, that's wonderful, positive thinking, but there's nothing to say that it's going to manifest simply because you've just got a plan in mind, just in case. Even if you don't want to ever see it again and you hand it to the experts, you've got, your videographer, photographer, and say, look, I don't want to see this plan again because I don't believe in it, but, I don't want to manifest it, but, please make sure you execute it if you have to. I think it's a great collaboration of sorts. The couples empowering people like yourself to make those decisions on their behalf, but at the same time, them also giving you guidance about what they prefer, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think, going back to when you first meet the couple as a photographer or any vendor, I guess, the planning process starts then. You sort of gauge what sort of couple they are, whether they're outgoing, flamboyant, or whether they're a little bit more reserved, and you start planning around that. I find through, years of experience that a lot of couples might think they want the day a certain way, but when you offer them things or show them certain things, like, for example, you'd suggest, okay, well, one of the meetings we do prior to the wedding, we meet at the venue, we walk around, plan the shots on the day, plan the shots as they will be on the day. And they might initially say, okay, well, this is your job, you're the expert, we'll leave that to you. But when you take them on site and say, well, okay, we can do shots here, we can do shots there, what do you think? Then they suddenly, because you've given them options, they have ideas about, okay, well, I think, yeah, that looks really well, or the bridal party shot might look nice there. And I find, just giving them that opportunity to have a little bit of input emotionally buys them into it a bit more, rather than kind of looking at the watch and say, I want to get back to my guests, which, again, we try to run a fine balancing act of spending the critical amount of time with the photographer to get the shots we want, but also to give the bride and groom as much time with the guests and the family as possible. But yeah, planning is every part of the day is of the essence, really. I find, and I think,
I love this. I really appreciate that it's mindful of giving them enough options that allow them to feel as though that they have total control of the day, but at the same time you are also guiding them in ways to say, hey, you've trusted me and my style, and so therefore, here is how I can guide, not dictate your approach to the planning process for what I'm capable of providing for you. And I think that's a really, really collaborative process that, any couple should be looking for right at the booking stages when they're figuring out, what kind of vendor are we talking with exactly, and how do we, and we obviously we're going to go into a little bit more detail of that later in the show. But I know that you've been around for a long time. You've been around for, I think, 4 years longer in this industry than I have.
Oh, right. Okay. I wasn't right on
that. I was traipsing around on cruise ships for a lot longer in between that. Even still, you were doing wedding photography before that. You've seen a lot, and the reason why I bring it up is you've seen a lot. You've been through many different changes and trends and flows within the industry. When it comes to, is there any sort of things that you've changed in your process or adapted to in the planning stages and the ways that weddings are prepared for over the last 16 years, or has it largely remained the same?
I think in terms of planning, initially when I first started out, I think more on the side of, let's just, go with the flow. Let's have a more relaxed day. Let's see how things pan out. But I think as I got more experienced in the industry, I realized that pretty much 90 to 95% of weddings never go 100% as planned. And if you don't have a loose sort of framework as to what you expect to happen next, things, I guess, sort of get out of time. You run out of time to do certain things. Like, you don't have enough time for the bride and groom shoot. There isn't enough time for the guests, for the couple to spend with the guests and the family to do things they want. So I think having a loose framework of what you want to happen is pivotal. And I think that's definitely changed, certainly from the way I plan weddings. I plan it a little bit more forensically now. That's not to say that I'm dictatorial in any way. I'm at pains to get that across to the couple, because I think even going back to my own wedding, when myself and my wife got married 25 years ago now, we didn't really have that much input with the photographer. It was just a case of, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going. And, we just felt like we were being dragged along in the process. We certainly didn't. I mean, some of the photographs were great, but we didn't feel like obviously physically, but not emotionally. We weren't emotionally part of the process. And looking back, obviously having the experience now as a wedding photographer, I kind of wish that we had a little bit more input. So that's certainly something that I try to bring into my planning, not just with the couple, but with other vendors. Obviously, like yourself, when we work together, I think last October down in the Royal
Mm.
National Park. It was a pretty wet day itself as well. I seem to remember.
Yes, it was actually. Yeah.
The weir was closed. We had to drive all the way around through a waterfall. And that's a great example of having to be flexible with your planning, but doing that within a sort of a framework gives you that confidence. Say, okay, well, we know what's happening next. We know what's going on, so we can take an extra 20 minutes to do this, or if we need to go somewhere a little bit further that's a bit drier, a bit undercover, we can do that. So planning is good because it doesn't, I think it gives you more flexibility as long as you use it as a bit of a framework rather than a rigidly held, this has to happen.
An interesting irony, I think, that's occurred as I'm hearing you talk about how 16 years ago, further back than that, with your own wedding, etc., there was a sense that, you know, you just do as the experts tell you and that's it, and it was generally accepted, yet like not appreciated sort of convention. Whereas now, but yet at the same time, you could argue that in one sense that had the ability to like give couples like a really sort of a hands-off approach of like, okay, we'll just do what the experts say and then we can just focus on having fun. But yet at the same time, they lost that autonomy. Whereas now autonomy is like the biggest thing, and I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. And so with so much choice and ability and right to have a say in different things, it's great, obviously, as you say, to have that emotional buy-in, but at the same time, it means that couples are also extraordinarily overwhelmed, and it makes for a much more complicated process, which is why I can appreciate that you have a forensic approach. Now, speaking of detail, because I know that someone like yourself is going to be extraordinarily detailed in your end product that you provide, which is obviously going to be vastly different from, as you call, Uncle Brian coming out and taking a couple photos on his new shiny.
Apologies to all the Brians out there.
yeah. I know it's Uncle X. You know, it always is the way. But you know, obviously, of course, nothing compared to somebody who has been in the game as long as you have. Obviously, withstanding that some people make that choice when it comes to even photography. I think, you know, obviously MCs are much more wholesalely much more exported out to friends and family, unfortunately. But when it comes to photography, while it doesn't happen as often, I know that it still occurs and I do see it. Just, you know, why just really is it so important that Uncle Brian, you know, stay at the table, enjoy himself, and you take care of the show?
I think with photography, like any wedding vendor, if we just go back momentarily to yourself, obviously working with yourself, Nathan, at Audley Hall last October, I can see the amount of work that you put into the reception, to getting to know the couple, to planning the evening, and that transfers to all the vendors. And it's something that a lot of couples don't see. And why should they? They don't see the duck paddling under the water. They don't see all the, you know, the hard work that goes in behind the scenes. And I think with, you know, the advent of so many wonderful cameras out there, you know, every second person has a fairly good full frame camera with, you know, quite high megapixels. So when it comes to cost saving on the day, look, weddings are horrendously expensive. Everybody knows that, especially people who work in the industry. So you can't blame couples who want to try and save a little bit of money here and there. And I guess, you know, if you just want the day documented, certain images of the ceremony, certain family photographs, look, that's fine. I get it. I guess the point I'm trying to get across is you're not with somebody who's not experienced in wedding photography. You're not going to get images that evoke the emotion of the day, that capture certain responses. One of the key things that I do in wedding photography is obviously you're focused primarily on the bride and groom, the action, but I like to capture the reaction as well. It's not something that people often think about. So it's when in the ceremony, you've got the ring exchange, I pan across, get a shot of the mum and dad of the bride holding hands, looking at each other, being tearful. And when the couple see that shot, because obviously during the ceremony, they're looking at each other. There's no way they're looking at the mum and dad, and they see that shot. And that to me, that is the key to great wedding photography. It's capturing images that the bride and groom, if you weren't there, they wouldn't see it. And somebody who's not experienced in wedding photography doesn't know where to put themselves on the day to capture that shot.
Correct.
And to surprise a bride and groom with that type of shot, and they go, oh my goodness, look at that emotion on my mum's face, and it's my day. And I've had couples, primarily brides rather than grooms, but some grooms as well, getting emotional when they see the photography that I've done on the day. And it's all the work that goes into the background, knowing where to put yourself, knowing, anticipating what's happening next, what's coming next. And I think one of the things, looking back to when I first started in wedding photography, looking back, I'm actually surprised that I survived so long, because I remember the first few weddings that I shot, I think I was just overwhelmed by the amount of things that you need to consider and think about. You're looking at, as nicely, the sun's just come out now. You're looking at where the sun is in the sky. You're looking at the background, how that's playing on the landscape, how it's going to affect the shot. Unless you're experienced in wedding photography, you're not doing that, and you're not thinking about that, and you're not thinking about the next shot and how you're going to, organize the bridal party. So that there's so much to consider on the day. If you're just happy with a few happy snaps of the day, just to remember by, then by all means go the family member with a fairly good camera route. But if you're looking to capture those real emotive images, then you do need a professional, to be honest. And that's not just me spooking the industry.
No, you are so correct about that. I mean, you're right. There is so many different factors to take into consideration. I mean, obviously, I can, write a book on the amount of things that as an MC I need to take care of in a wedding as well. And so it's but you're right. It definitely comes from that experience, and someone that is more emotionally connected to you, such as a family member or a friend, are going to, as you said, rightfully so at the beginning, they're just going to primarily focus on you. And that's great, because there is an inherent sort of understanding of that's the job, that's the role, that is the task at hand to successfully take care of the job. But you know that there is so much more outside that pie that sits there. So no, that's fantastic. And I love the idea of that all becoming relatively seamless. And you mentioned about how we've all got to work together. And it's obviously photography is one component. It's an important component, but it is one component of a wedding. How do you work with other vendors on the day, including myself, of course, to make sure that everything goes right? And also, a lot of vendors, obviously, we talk amongst ourselves and we refer to each other, and we're able to tell couples, get this person, get that. What kind of role do referrals play in this sort of process in terms of collaboration as well?
Yeah, I'll answer the first bit, the first part of the question first, about working with other vendors. I think, I used to, in the early days, I used to just roll with it, rock up on the day, say hello to the other vendors, the celebrant, the MC. Sometimes it's the same person these days. Even the florist, if I'm doing setup shots for the reception. What I like to do now is get in touch with the other vendors before the day. So you start getting to know the vendors, you start planning with the vendors. So it's even from before the day, it's a collaborative experience. You kind of say, okay, well, how, excuse me, how would it work if I'm an extra 10 minutes here with the bride and groom, or how much time do you need to this? What are you planning? I think back in the early days, I wasn't aware of what was really happening in the reception until I arrived on the day. Pretty much now, though, I know exactly what's happening, what sort of games the bride and groom are having in the reception, how many speeches, who's making the speeches, when they're happening. So that helps me prepare as best I can for the day. And, I find that, especially when you develop relationships with other vendors, that you appreciate each other more, you appreciate the job that each other does and how it is quite often time reliant. So
it's a long day if you don't like each other, that's for sure.
Oh, definitely, for sure, definitely. And look, you're not going to refer somebody who you kind of think, okay, well, they're a great photographer, they've got fantastic images, but they kind of messed up the other parts of the day as well. So they're just a little bit too focused on what they're doing without considering the other. As you mentioned, I'm one part of the day. I'm a small part of the day. MCs, florists, cake makers, the venue obviously is a massive part of the day. You need to work well with everybody, not just for the hope of being referred by your fellow wedding vendors, but just to present a seamless experience for the bride and groom, to have their day go as seamlessly and as wonderful as possible. That's why we all work in the industry.
Oh, there's nothing worse. Totally agree with you. There's nothing worse than seeing a couple seeing a couple of vendors getting upset at each other in the day. And I mean, I'm sure we've all heard the stories. And so, yeah. I mean, you've certainly seen it. And I certainly have. And I think it's awful for them to imagine, we've trusted all these people and we trust them that I mean, look, we work in a very unique industry where, you know, the workplace that we show up to is never going to ever happen again. It's a
Yeah.
unique environment that will never compose of itself in terms of the audience and all of the composition of the vendors. It'll never exist in that same time and space ever again. But at
Yeah.
the same time, they trust that we can all exist within that environment because we're supposed to be professionals. And yes, nothing worse when we don't, because then you know that at the end of the day, two things are occurring. One, it's just not creating a fun environment, of course. But two, you know, that lack of cohesion means that there's always going to be something else missed along the way. There's another rough edge to the day that doesn't need to happen there. And so, you know, I can really appreciate your evolution of sorts of understanding, you know, that, you know, as time goes on, and that's, I think, as a mark of really professional and experienced people like yourself who have gone through the motions of understanding over a long period of time that, this is the role I play, not only for myself, but also in amongst the pool of people that are here. You know, what
Yeah,
I'm really
definitely.
interested in talking with you as well, David, about your experience overseas, because I know that must
Okay, yeah.
yeah, because I think it's phenomenal. Obviously, you know, you've worked across Australia, which is, you know, fantastic in of itself, and then being in Europe, obviously, there's some beautiful places that are, particularly in Italy, seems to be one of the most popular places for people to go to. But so,
Definitely.
how is this sort of experience of international exposure and also being around the country, traveling, how has this impacted your overall style and approach to your work?
Very good question. I think having that experience of shooting in different, not just different locations, but different countries, there's different cultures. Primarily for myself being from the UK originally, my wife is from Ireland. We've both lived in both places. Um, I guess from my perspective, the key component that would be vastly different from Australia is the quality of light. As you can imagine, the weather in Northern Europe is a little more cloudy a lot of the time,
Yeah.
when it's not raining, obviously. And that's actually, from a photographer's point of view, it's actually a little bit better for photography. It makes the job a little bit easier. We don't have that real strong, harsh light in Europe, in Northern Europe anyway. So it makes the shots a little bit easier to come by. You always have to work a bit harder in Australia. But also the locations as well. You know, there's a lot of, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of castles. There's a lot of old stately homes in Europe. Lends itself to that sort of historical aspect to a lot of wedding shots. The culture is a little bit different in terms of weddings. The day would plan out a little bit differently. Certainly, I think since COVID, the wedding day in Australia as well seems to be a little bit shorter. When I first started, when we moved to Australia, the wedding days that I'd shoot would be 12 to 14 hours, and you wouldn't sit down for that length of time. It's a long day. Now I think that the days tend to be shorter. Whereas in Europe, I think talking to other photographers back there, that they still have quite long wedding days. Doesn't that shortening of the days doesn't seem to happen much. But having exposure to different markets, different cultures, certainly gives you a broader outlook on photography. And one of the ways that I've learned to shoot is trying to get the couple or the bridal party indeed to interact with each other. I think when I stand with the camera, the first thing people do, they pull some weird people, myself included. When you get a camera in your face, you don't know what to do with yourself. So I try and get the couple to focus on themselves, interact with each other, interact with the guests. And I guess that's the essence of candid photography, right? It's not looking at the camera. It's, even though you may be aware the photographer is somewhere close by, you're not focusing on that because you're just doing what you're doing, and you're taking the shots when people don't know it's happening, to get that that more natural response. And that's certainly more of a style that I've developed here as well. But
it's very popular, isn't it, though, right? This idea of capturing things in the moment, particularly I find in Australia anyway. I mean, look, everyone likes a pose photo at some point, but I think there's a regimen here in Australia that just, culturally speaking, that just enjoys not having to sort of be so static, so to speak. There's a preference to just sort of just take photos of me and just find what worked. The shutter, and I think also too over the course of time where obviously the shutter speeds are increasing and you can push the button and the burst modes can give you more things than you can possibly believe. There's an opportunity to capture almost frame upon frame upon frame of life. And
Yeah,
it is just gives that more option to be like, look, just push the button and see what we get, as opposed to like, oh no, it's got to be perfect because the film only has a certain amount of exposure. And so I can understand that
correct.
as technology's improved too, it's like, well, just if my phone can do it, you can do it,
Yeah. With this, obviously, since the advent of digital photography, it's made life a lot easier for photographers. When I first started out in photography, it was film photography, and there's a little bit of a revolution going back to film photography.
Yes, I've
Um,
noticed that. Yeah.
but with digital, there is that balance to be achieved. If you're just happy, trigger happy, you're going to make a lot more work for yourself in post production. Uh,
True.
Obviously, that's the other thing that's changed. There's a lot more post production now. Is obviously with film, you just develop the film and select the best images. There's so much work that goes into post production now. So, if you are somebody that's just trigger happy, it's you might capture a great shot somewhere amongst the thousands, but you're gonna have to work hard to find it. But and it's also, I think, a little bit. It's not very well thought out if you're just somebody who can
Mm.
press the shutter and wait for it to burst and hope of catching something.
Mm.
What I try and do is use my experience to anticipate what's going to happen. I think I mentioned this before, to put myself in the right position. Might take 2 or 3 shots of the same thing happening, but rather than take 1,000, you're putting yourself in the right position. The experience puts you there rather than just saying, oh, let's just fire away and see what happens. And
No,
also,
I love that.
obviously, you're saving yourself a lot of work. So it's kind of using your experience with anything. It's using your
Oh,
experience
it's perfect, right?
to do the job
Quality
better, right?
over quantity. Simple. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I love that. You're putting yourself where you need to be. You know the shot. You've been doing this for a long time, and it's obviously
yeah,
an incredibly. I love the insight. It's such a great, differentiator between someone who's been around for a long time versus someone who hasn't. There is a lot of these things that obviously I'm well back from an amateur. I don't know, like toddler at this kind of thing, and I don't certainly plan on becoming a photographer anytime soon. So obviously, my concept of what would be considered helpful, for
mm,
instance, taking a billion photos and be like, oh yeah, there'll be some gold in there. You're like, well, hang on, that means I've got to spend, as a business
yeah,
owner, tons more time to sift through photos, and that's tiring. That's time consuming. That doesn't get me the results that I think I'm going to get. And so therefore, being in the right spot at the right time and capturing a certain few amount that really establish quality is
mm.
always going to be much better. And I can definitely resonate with that. David, we are fast running out of time. And so
Okay, wow, that
what I would
was quick.
but I know, but just like a wedding, right? It just goes over so
Yeah,
fast. But I do have a couple extra rapid fire questions before we wrap
sure.
everything up and we can find out exactly how people can book your very experienced services. First question, what is one of the funniest moments you've had over the last 16 years? Just anything that comes to mind.
Oh, it has to be a bridal party shot. Quite recently in Manly, obviously, I won't give away the couple's names.
Sure, of course.
I think the bridal party had a little few too many, and they just collapsed backwards into a bush. And there was, unbeknownst to the couple and the bridal party, there was a pond behind the bush, so they all
Oh
ended up
no.
just absolutely soaking wet. And I did capture it. I walked around the bush and went, shh. And the couple absolutely loved that shot, and it was just funny. I mean, they hadn't planned it. Luckily, it
Yeah,
wasn't a long drop. It was just
yeah.
so that was just hilarious, but it was all
Oh,
done in
I
good fun.
love
And
that
it's
so
yeah,
much.
it just everybody just burst out laughing, and that's what creates sometimes some of the best shots, just spontaneous, unplanned moments like that.
I agree wholeheartedly. I always tell my couples imperfection is always better than perfection. And it's a
Definitely,
hard concept for some people because they want quote unquote the perfect wedding. But I try to remove the word perfect from my vernacular because at the end of the day, no event that I've ever hosted, I'm sure just like yourself,
yeah,
has ever been that as good as something where there's some certain parts of imperfection that are taken advantage of like that. So that's
definitely,
fantastic. I quite like that. And finally, why do you do this? I know you have a passion for photography. I know that you've gone out of
yeah.
out of the finance game, and that all makes sense. But why are you still doing it after 16 years?
It took me a while to get to a level where I was comfortable.
Mm.
I'm still, even after 16 years, I'm still nervous on the day of a wedding shoot. Nervous enough to do a good job, nervous enough to want to do a good job. And I think it took me a while to realize why I still got nervous is because if I'm not nervous enough, I don't value it enough and I
Agreed.
still get nervous. a little bit nervous before the day because it's important, and it's not just important to the couple. It's important to me to do an amazing job for the couple, as the same with any wedding vendor.
Yeah.
And that makes me realize how privileged we are as wedding vendors to work in the industry we do. That it's part of a couple's, one of the biggest days in their lives. And as you mentioned before, we only get one shot at it. And I kind of really appreciate and feel the privilege of that responsibility. And it spurs me on to work harder, to work better, to improve what I do. And I love it. I love the capturing that image that you planned it and it comes out just as planned. Sorry, I had to get it in there.
I couldn't appreciate this more. This is so good.
And you just look and think, wow, that is amazing. And you present as a couple and they're in tears, and tears of joy rather than unhappiness. And I still get a kick out of that to this day.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, David, I would love for the audience to know how you can make them cry with your photography services. How can they find you?
Yeah, my website, Nathan, is www.davidmaddenphotography.com, all one word. I'm also on Instagram, David Madden Photography. Post there after every wedding. And I'll obviously get in touch through the website. My contact details are there too.
Fantastic. Well, David, I really, truly hope that we cross paths again. I'm sure we will in the future.
Pleasure.
And hopefully a much more drier wedding than you and I both experienced in the last
Fingers
time.
crossed. Definitely. Thank you so much, Nathan, for having me on. It's a pleasure, mate. And I hope we work together again soon.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Just As Planned Wedding Podcast. Please like and subscribe to let me know that you want more videos just like this one. And of course, please follow us on our socials at Just As Planned Wedding on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for more expert insights to help your wedding go just as planned.